3 weeks after she threw me out, she asked if I'd finally learned my lesson. I nodded once and handed her an envelope instead. Inside were divorce papers and a link to the footage that proved her son had staged the whole thing. It started like most disasters do. Quiet. Ordinary. A Tuesday that smelled like dish soap and reheated pasta. I was at the sink, rinsing a pot I had cooked in, listening to the familiar soundtrack of our house. The dryer tumbling. A video game humming upstairs. Her phone vibrating on the couch every few minutes with work notifications she pretended not to notice. When I met Lauren, her son Caleb was 10. He was small then. All elbows and sharp questions. His dad was mostly absent, the kind of man who existed in excuses and missed weekends. I told myself I could be steady where someone else had been unreliable. Not to replace a father. Just to be present. To be consistent. To build something that felt safe. By the time Caleb was 15, presence had turned into a battlefield. Anything I suggested felt like a threat to him. Homework, curfews, respect. Even basic stuff like not leaving dirty dishes in the living room. Lauren would back me up for about 12 hours, then soften the moment he sulked. Her voice would change in the way it always did when she was choosing the path of least resistance. He has been through a lot, she would say. He needs patience. What she meant was, he needs to win. That Tuesday, the fight began with something stupid like they usually did. Caleb wanted a new gaming laptop immediately. Not for his birthday, not after grades improved, not after he finished summer school, immediately. He said he needed it for school. I had looked up his assignments. The only thing he needed it for was showing off to friends and streaming games. I told him no, not forever, not even harshly. Just, no, not now. Not like this. His face changed in a way that used to scare me because it was too old for a teenager. Cold. Calculating. Like he was moving pieces on a board. He stared at me for a second, then walked away without slamming his door. That was new. That was the part that should have warned me. 20 minutes later, there was a crash upstairs. A loud, heavy thud, followed by glass hitting the floor. Lauren bolted up the steps before I even had time to dry my hands. I followed slower, because something in me already knew what this was. I reached the top of the stairs and saw Lauren on her knees in the hallway. Caleb was on the floor by his bedroom door, clutching his shoulder. A broken frame lay beside him, the glass scattered like ice. He was crying, loud and rhythmic, the way a kid cries when he wants an audience. Lauren looked up at me and her eyes were already sharpening. Caleb pointed at me and said I grabbed him, that I shoved him, that I lost it because he talked back. I froze. Not because I was guilty, but because I could feel the entire narrative lock into place in her head. I said I had been downstairs. I said I had just arrived. I said I did not touch him. Lauren did not ask a single follow-up question. She did not look at the broken frame and wonder why it was smashed outward like it had been thrown. She did not notice he was holding the wrong shoulder, wincing dramatically while flexing the other arm just fine. She did not consider the timing, or the fact that the house had a staircase that creaks like a haunted movie every time someone runs up it, and I had not run. She just believed him. Her voice went low and flat, the way it does when she is done listening. You need to leave. Now. She stood up and put herself between me and him like I was a stranger who had wandered inside. Caleb watched from behind her. For half a second, his crying stopped and his eyes met mine. Not scared, not hurt, triumphant. That look did something to me. It didn't make me angry. It made me tired in a brand new way. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't start listing the years I had paid for this roof, the school trips, the braces, the endless groceries for a teenage appetite that could empty the fridge in a single night. I didn't beg her to listen. I just nodded once and said, okay. She expected a fight. I could tell by the way her shoulders were braced, ready for me to become the monster she had decided I was. Instead, I walked to our bedroom, pulled a duffel bag from the closet, and packed like I was leaving for a work trip. Underwear, socks, 2 pairs of jeans, a couple shirts, toiletries, my laptop and charger. I left the sentimental stuff, the framed photo from our beach trip, the watch she bought me, the silly souvenir magnet Caleb had made in 5th grade that said bonus dad. That word felt embarrassing now. When I came back down the hallway, Lauren was still in the same spot, stroking his hair and whispering to him the way she did when he had a headache or a bad day at school. I set my house key on the entry table and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. It sounded like a decision finalizing. I sat in my car for a while, staring at the porch light. The same porch light I had installed because the old one flickered and she said it gave her anxiety. My home looked warm from the outside. From the inside, it had become hostile territory in under 5 minutes. I ended up at a cheap hotel off the highway. Beige walls, stale air, a bed that felt like it had been slept in by 100 people who wanted to forget their own lives. I didn't sleep much. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I kept replaying the moment she chose him over me without hesitation. The lie hurt. The belief hurt more. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren saying what you did is unforgivable and Caleb is terrified. Not what happened, not what he said, what you did. She had already rewritten reality. An hour later, she said she was changing the locks for their safety. She said I could arrange to collect my things when she was home, supervised. Supervised, like I was a threat. I turned my phone off and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling tile with a water stain shaped like a continent. In the middle of that dead quiet, a thought surfaced. Not emotional, practical. The doorbell camera. Last year, we had a string of package thefts. Lauren had been furious. Caleb had been amused in that detached teenage way. I installed a doorbell camera and an extra outdoor camera that covered the driveway and part of the living room window. It recorded video. It recorded audio. It saved to the cloud. I hadn't thought about it since the theft stopped. I didn't check it that night. I let the shock settle. But in the morning, I drove to a library, opened my laptop, and logged in. There was a clip from the exact time of the crash. The camera didn't see the hallway, but the living room window had been open. The microphone was sensitive enough to catch everything that mattered. I listened with earbuds in a quiet corner surrounded by strangers reading books like their lives were intact. I heard myself say no. Calm, controlled. I heard Caleb hiss a threat under his breath. A low, nasty little promise. Then I heard the crash, the slam of impact, the glass breaking. Then I heard Lauren run upstairs. Then Caleb performed. The crying, the words, the accusation. And then, after the door clicked shut and I left, I heard the part that made my stomach go cold for a different reason. Lauren's voice softened. It was okay now, baby. He's gone. Caleb's voice changed instantly. No tears, no fear, just annoyance. He said it didn't even hurt that much. Then he asked if he could still get the laptop. Lauren sighed, tired, almost indulgent. She said, "We'll see." That was it. Not a shocked mother realizing her son had lied. Not a wife horrified that she had just exiled her husband over a manipulation. Just a weary little concession that told me she had been trained by him. Or had trained him. I didn't know which. Maybe both. I saved the footage in 3 places. A private cloud folder, an external drive, a second backup. Then I called an old friend from college who was now a family lawyer. He told me not to go near the house alone. He told me she was building a paper trail. He told me the footage was a gift I should treat like a loaded weapon. Carefully, quietly, without announcing it. I didn't want revenge. I wanted out. Completely, cleanly, quickly. So we filed. Irreconcilable differences. Simple language. Businesslike. No drama. We didn't mention the accusation yet. We didn't need to. We let her sit in the certainty of her story. The next 3 weeks were a strange kind of limbo. I rented a small, furnished apartment that smelled like someone else's detergent. I worked, I ate, I slept, I repeated. In the empty space, I realized how much energy I had been burning every day just trying to exist around their dynamic. The constant negotiating, the constant softening, the constant trying to earn a place in a family that could revoke me at any moment. Lauren texted periodically. The first week was righteous anger. The second week turned into cold logistics about bills. The third week turned into something like a performance of authority. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, she finally sent the message that told me she had stopped enjoying her victory. "Come by tomorrow at 6. We need to talk." No please, no question mark, a summons. My lawyer had the papers ready. I told him I wanted to hand them to her myself. He warned me to keep it calm. He told me to say nothing until she held the documents. He told me to record the interaction for my own protection. I agreed. The next evening, I dressed like I was walking into a meeting, not a fight. Neutral colors, clean shoes, nothing that looked aggressive, nothing that looked apologetic. I arrived at 5:58. I didn't use my old key. I didn't ring the bell. I stood on the porch and waited. At 6:02, the door opened. Lauren stood there with her arms crossed, hair shoved into a messy bun. She looked tired, but the tiredness hadn't softened her. It had sharpened her. Behind her, Caleb lingered near the kitchen doorway, pale and watchful. The triumph was gone. He looked like he sensed weather changing. Lauren looked me up and down like she expected me to look smaller. She said, "I hope you've had time to think. I said I'm here because you asked." She stepped back reluctantly and let me in. The house smelled different, stale, like microwave dinners and unwashed laundry. The living room had Caleb's stuff everywhere: controllers, hoodies, empty snack wrappers. It looked like what happens when the one person who keeps routines leaves. Lauren didn't invite me to sit. She stood in the space between the couch and the TV and spoke like she was addressing a student. She said she needed to know if I had learned my lesson, if I was ready to apologize to Caleb, if I was ready for therapy, if I understood how close I came to destroying their safety. Caleb watched from the kitchen with his jaw clenched. He kept glancing at my hands, like he expected me to do something. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't relive the night. I held out the manila envelope. Lauren frowned. She took it like it might be a confession letter. She opened it and read the first page. Her face drained, slowly, like someone turning down a dimmer switch. Petition for dissolution of marriage. She whispered, "What is this?" I said it's later. She flipped pages with shaking hands. She started to speak, then stopped, like she couldn't decide which emotion was safest to show. Then her voice snapped into anger because anger was the only place she knew how to stand. She said, "I can't do this." She said, "After what I did, I don't get to play victim." She said, "I need to take accountability." I nodded toward the last page. There's a link and a password. She turned to it, suspicious. Her eyes locked on the words evidence file and access code. I said the doorbell camera records audio. I didn't say it like a threat. I said it like a fact. I said it caught everything. The argument, the crash, the accusation, and the conversation after I left. The room changed. Lauren's mouth opened slightly, like her brain was trying to protect her from understanding. Caleb made a small choking sound from the kitchen. He went even paler. He said, "Mom, he's bluffing." But Lauren wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the paper like it was a bomb. For the first time in 3 weeks, her certainty cracked. She asked me if I recorded them. I said I recorded my property, for security. It did its job. Her anger collapsed into panic. She stepped toward me, hands raised, like if she got close enough she could negotiate reality. She said he's just a kid. She said he didn't mean it. She said we can fix this. She said we can tell people it was a misunderstanding. I told her she told people I was violent. I told her she changed the locks. I told her she supervised my life like I was a criminal. Those weren't misunderstandings. Those were choices. Then the panic in her eyes turned into fury, because fury is what happens when someone runs out of control. She said I was going to ruin them. She said I was taking my money and leaving them with nothing. I said I was claiming my equity and my belongings, and my lawyer would handle the rest. That's when she turned on Caleb. Not gently, not protectively. The way a person turns when the wall they leaned on suddenly disappears. She shouted his name like it was a curse. She asked him what he did. She demanded to know why he lied. Caleb shrank back and stammered and said it was just a mistake and he didn't think it would go this far. Lauren looked like her lungs had forgotten how to work. The united front was gone. It wasn't mother and son against the monster anymore. It was mother and son staring at the cost of their own choices. I bent down, picked up the papers that had slipped to the floor, and placed them neatly on the arm of the couch. I said a process server would contact her soon. I said a moving company would collect my items on Friday morning. I told her not to be there. She yelled that I can't walk out on my family. It was almost impressive how quickly she could switch to need when power failed. I looked at her and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not love, not anger. Just a final, clean truth. I said you ended this family 3 weeks ago. You just didn't bother to tell me until now. Then I walked out. This time, I didn't sit in my car and stare at the house. I started the engine and left like someone closing a tab they no longer needed open. The divorce was straightforward once the footage surfaced. The accusation evaporated. The story collapsed. My lawyer pushed for a clean settlement. I got a buyout of my share of the house and retrieved my things without stepping inside again. I heard through a mutual friend that Lauren had to refinance and take in a roommate. I heard Caleb got suspended at school a month later for lying about another kid. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt confirmation. A pattern doesn't stop because you wish it would. It stops when consequences finally show up. Months later, I saw them once in a hardware store. Lauren looked older, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep and everything to do with carrying the weight of her own decisions. Caleb was taller, lanky, headphones on, avoiding her eyes. They saw me at the same time. Lauren froze. Caleb went rigid like he expected me to ruin his life with a sentence. I did nothing. No smile, no nod, no speech. I pushed my cart past them like they were strangers standing near a shelf of paint samples. That was the moment I understood the real victory. Not proving them wrong, not watching them fall apart, just being free enough that they no longer mattered. Thanks for listening. If this story resonated with you, subscribe and share what you would have done.